Play.
I have to tell you, very important, very sad, but also very beautiful message. The season 2024 is gonna be my last one. I'm gonna finish my career with the end of this season. There are some reasons behind it. Firstly, of course, my wrist. It's not exactly the way it should be, and it's not exactly the way how I want it. And the second reason is my inner feeling. I was thinking about this decision for a very long time. I was thinking very carefully about it. Of course, I was also thinking about the whole journey as a tennis player, which was incredible. I've had success. I've won trophies. I've really never dreamt of. So the journey was incredible. All the ups and downs. It was a incredible experience, which I'm so thankful for. But yeah, at the end, I came to the conclusion that this decision to end my career by the end of the season is the only right one. I'm very happy with it, and I am also super excited for everything what's coming next, and for a lot of more information, and also all the talks with my family and all the talks about my career and my past. Let's check out the vlog, which is coming on tomorrow.
Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, Vanch.
Good afternoon to everybody from the Pacific time zone. But yeah.
Good evening, good night. I don't want to say good night, Damien, because that's goodbye. And I wouldn't want you to leave this show 2 minutes in.
You will be able to say it in like 50 minutes or so. So, I mean, definitely it will be good night for me after we finish, yes.
It's a language thing, funny enough. Hi to Yasmin, by the way. It's a language thing. Sometimes people that are, they're developing their English skills, let's say. Sometimes they say good night. And I go, what they mean is good evening, as in hello. But good night is also goodbye. We're saying goodbye. Do you like this segue, Vanch? By the way, we're saying goodbye to Dominic Thiem's professional tennis career. Today, we've obviously had this waiting for a few months. He, in his goodbye message, which I just played from a few months ago when he announced his retirement, said he's been thinking about this for a long, long time. How long do you think he was thinking about this for, Vanch?
I think probably since some point after 2020, after the 2023 US Open, because I mean, obviously he comes back in 2022 from the wrist problems that he had when he injured his wrist. Is that Mallorca 2021 till basically April 2022 he was out with the injury. And so I think there were some positive signs maybe in 2022 in the fall swing, but when that sort of didn't carry over to the South American clay in 2023, and we sort of got a really big sample size of results that just indicated that he's not really even playing at a top 75 or top 100 level, and like once that's just started to build over time, and plus I think he had more issues in his wrist later on as well, then it became clear to him that I think the time was coming to say goodbye. So it's probably been something that he had on his mind for about 6 months before he made that video that you played earlier.
Yeah, he kept sort of downplaying the wrist injury, and also to some extent questions over confidence. But then it did resurface again this year on the eve of Estoril, and he kind of did reference it again in that goodbye message. That message, by the way, of course, was from a couple of months ago or a few months ago when he announced his retirement. I mean, Damien, how long has it been since we saw Dominic Thiem at his peak, at a very, 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 very high level?
Yeah, pretty much that injury. It was literally that one problem that killed his career. I know that he wasn't like exactly doing all that well just before it happened. There was that
Mhm.
loss to Andújar and everything. Yeah, sure. I mean, he had some random results, but still, that patch from like 2016 to 2021, he was consistently elite. Then the injury comes, and well, it's done. He was not satisfied, obviously, with a career that would just have him sort of going back and forth between being in the top 100 and not being in the top 100. And I think it's also a huge kind of like lesson in a way for us that yeah, even one injury can like totally destroy
Us,
a
you
career.
mean? You mean for
Yeah,
us?
even for us as like journalists, media people, tennis fans,
Well,
that because we're used to that system of like Juan Martin del Potro, and he
yeah.
comes back like 50 times. He has 50 different versions of his backhand, but every single time after just like 5 months of, I don't know, just playing regularly again, he's back at the top. He's back and he can beat pretty much anybody. And that was not the case with Team. It just took so much of his forehand. And yeah, I would say US Open, of course, 2020, then the ATP finals. So yeah, maybe 2020 ATP finals. Maybe that was the last time we saw peak Dominic Thiem. Maybe 2021 Australian Open. I mean, something like that. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
the
mean, it
last
was.
really signature big win that he had was that 2-0 comeback against Kyrgios in the third round.
Mhm.
That was sort of the last match where I saw him performing at the level of, closest to his prime.
Even that, though, Vanch, from memory, that was kind of a very patchy performance from both players. I'm not sure if I would put that performance in the same. This is, by the way, I'm relying entirely on memory. Maybe I could watch the match again and see it through a different lens. But from memory, that was like, oh, Dominic, wow, what's going on here? It seemed to be an aberration, by the way, at the time, and so did the loss to Dimitrov. In fact, I think there were issues with his shoes around that time as well. I remember him complaining during the US Open as well about his shoes and one or two other issues that were materializing. But we probably all thought that it was just an aberration and that we would soon see him back. You mentioned the Mallorca injury, but we did see, that loss to Andujar in Paris, where he'd obviously had so much success in the past, kind of. For me, the last sort of time we saw Dominic Thiem at a, unbelievable was also his peak. It was just such a fall from the cliff from November 2020 to ultimately, that injury you mentioned in Mallorca, and then the last couple of years. Damien, what were his performances like on the Challenger Tour when he did regress to that level?
Well, yeah, he got a final in Rennes, but he got crushed by Hugo Humbert. I mean, right away, he wasn't actually getting that much traction. I think he came back in Mallorca, not Mallorca, Marbella 2022, right? That's the name of the event, I think. That was the same one when also Stan Wawrinka came back. So that was obviously a bit of a big story there. But yeah, I mean, he lost to Pedro Cachin in the opening round. And I feel like at the very beginning, when he came back, there was this thing where like a lot of players would just peak against him. It was like everyone wanted to get that one big win. I think when he came back in 2022 and he had this long stretch where he just couldn't even get anything going, even in challengers. I think I remember pointing this out that like almost everybody is playing their best match of the season against him. So yeah, I mean in 2022, I think he got that final in Rennes, and well, it was a great run, sure, but he didn't even like stand a chance to Humbert. And I don't think he really had anything that huge on the Challenger Tour from that point onwards either. There was definitely a semi that he lost to Medvedev in Mauthausen, which, I mean, also at home, but fast clay. Okay, that was respectable as well. And then, of course, 2024 was just pretty horrible in all avenues. So I think he only played like 2 challengers. He was supposed to play 3 of them and prepare for the entire clay swing. But as you said earlier, that's kind of exactly when it went wrong, because he once again was just not comfortable with the wrist. I think he said that he like over practiced it a bit. And yeah, that was pretty much the beginning of the downfall. So even though he played a few challengers, and I think I said it before that like he was pretty humble about this, I think, and just wasn't really like afraid of going down a level or anything like that. Like sometimes we see other players do. yeah, he just didn't really get the results either, even on the challenger circuit.
I just want to dial back as well to Estoril this year. I think he almost knew then, Damien. I think he was basically saying things for probably for the first time. He'd probably always uttered publicly that the wrist wasn't an issue and that he hoped to be back to his best. And I think by Estoril this year, and probably the results there, if anything, confirmed. I think he lost to Gasquet, if I'm right there. I think that kind of pretty much did it, really. I think that then obviously he had to qualify. Oh, I think by the time French Open rolled around, he had already announced it, because of course he had the ceremony in Paris, and of course the whole wildcard thing. So it was between Estoril and the French Open that he made that announcement, right?
Yeah. He at the French, that was the big discussion that should he get a wild card? He didn't. In the end, though, I mean, still played Langland, I think, both times and got some great crowds there. So
Yeah,
kind of worked out, I guess, both ways. I think both parties were satisfied in the end, in a way. Also lost to like a promising player, at least, not to like a pretty random person or something like that. He didn't lose to like me or Vanch or something like that. But yeah, Estoril, I would probably agree with you, but because it came after these challengers that he played. Because if you remember, at the beginning of the season, he plays Australia, he plays Davis Cup, and then he announces that he is going to have this long training block on clay, because he wants to change something. He needs adjustments. So I think at the time he would have been still hopeful, because clearly he was trying to mix things up. He was trying to do something more. I think even then he said that he has to be in like the top 50 at the end of the year or something like that in order to keep going. So even then he had it on his mind, but he was clearly still hopeful. And then when he had that long training block and something happened again with the wrist, he goes playing challengers. He plays two absolutely horrible matches against Michalski and Neumeier. And I think, especially when he goes to a story, then nothing improves. Loses to Gasquet, who at the time was like really getting tired after an hour of play. That's probably when he knew that he is done.
Vanch, what are I think you mentioned earlier in a WhatsApp message, your earliest sort of memories of Dominic on tour?
Yeah, I think I remember the first time that I watched him, I was actually in like 8th grade English class. I was getting really bored. So I just pulled out my iPod and I just started live streaming the Wawrinka versus Thiem Madrid match. And it was in the third set. And I just remember seeing this guy who's so strong from behind the baseline, hitting these really ridiculous backhand winners and like, just really challenging Stan. And at the time, I mean, Stan was having a really good year. Like he had won the Australian Open, won Monte Carlo, like a few inconsistent results here and there, but like he was really one of the best players in the world. And so when he beat Stan, that's when I really sort of took notice and was like, oh, okay, I like a lot of things in his game. And it seemed like he was just tailor-made for clay at that point. And there were about 2-3 years in there where he was winning a lot of 250s, or at least getting to a lot of finals. Even played, I think, Nadal in the second round of the French Open and 14 already. And Nadal was already sort of hyping him up, and it was very clear that he was going to be a top 10 player, and he was going to be really, really good on clay. That much was very obvious watching him the first time.
What about you, Damien?
Yeah, not really sure, to be honest. I mean, I remember this much for sure. There was a big story, the two most powerful one-handers we had on the tour at the time, perhaps ever, really. And Domi getting that win from, I think, 1-6 down. He lost the opener 1-6, I think. Yeah. So that was definitely massive. I remember watching it. Whether there was something earlier, I can't really tell you. In the group chat, obviously, I was kind of thinking about maybe like the moment he became elite. So 2016 Buenos Aires when he beat Nadal. And that performance doing what Thiem did, right? Just basically blasting ridiculous shots from both wings behind the baseline, and somehow it's enough to beat Rafa, whereas 100,000 players before failed doing the exact same. Of course, it was also 2016 Nadal. I guess you can make the case that he wasn't that strong that year. The depth was lacking and everything. But to me, that was kind of the moment when Thiem became Thiem. This is probably from like their Madrid meeting or something like that, or Rome, but later. But yeah, I think that also kickstarted the series of Thiem beating Nadal on clay once every single season between 2016-19. And I think I said it already on the Nadal retirement video that we had, or stream, that it's pretty funny that like in so many cases we actually, and this is definitely from 2016, and in so many cases we just kind of value a player's legacy through the lens of beating Nadal and Clay as well. And for Thiem, that is also a massive part of his legacy for sure. Just the fact that only he was able to compete with Nadal and Clay in these years, especially 17, 19.
Yeah.
And it was
17.
those Nadal wins that earned him that title of like Prince of Clay, right? I mean, that was always
Yeah.
what people associated Domi with.
I mean, obviously, away from Paris, they did come, but obviously in Paris, they didn't in the two finals of 2018, 2019. 2018 was a fairly much a non-event. I think they were on serve for most of the first. The first set was certainly very competitive, but it was one of those that once Nadal sealed the first set and then ran away with it, or started to run away with the second, it was sort of just felt like a non-event. 2019, though, I mean, it was a match, Vanch, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, the first two sets were really high quality. I remember, being really, really in awe of the level for the first two sets. I think Thiem had to play 4 days in a row as well, so maybe a little bit unlucky in terms of like fatigue was really kicking in the last two sets. That's why they weren't really that competitive. But that was a very memorable tournament for him, regardless, right? Because he got the win over Djokovic, and he had to deal with the insanely windy conditions in the semis, and it was like a 2-day semi where they had to come back and play sets 4 and 5, and like, yeah, I mean, there was a moment where I think he was up 5-3 and serving for it against Djokovic, and then he gets broken, and then he has to kind of reset, and then he wins it 7-5 in the fourth. But it was like a ton. It was just super emotional, and like he had no time to recover everything and get ready for the final. And even then, I mean, the first two sets were just so high level. So I think I'll always remember that match for just the first two sets that he was able to give us that show for about like 2 hours. After that, it was a non-event, but.
The Thiem Djokovic semi-final, yes, I remember it was rain hit on the Friday and then into the Saturday. I know it was 5 sets. Did you say he was serving for the match and he didn't serve it out, Vanch?
Yeah, I think he served for the fifth at 5-3 and then gets broken, and just makes like 4 errors in a row with his forehand, just gets really tight, and then ends up breaking at 5-all.
Yeah, because he ends up winning it, as I can see now. Yeah, 7-5 in that fifth set. Yeah, so this was obviously, he's now just getting better and better. And he's getting closer and closer, and maybe he never would have quite overcome Nadal at the French Open, but maybe he wouldn't have to if he'd have been still the same Dominic Thiem in 2021 and 2023, the years that in recent years that obviously Rafa didn't go on to win the title. But by 2023, of course, he was a pale of himself. I also remember that match he had against Schwartzman in 2020, which I think was also 5 sets. But I think that was in the midst of this very quick back-to-back US Open, French Open scenario where we had 2 Grand Slams probably within about 3 weeks of each other. Probably one finished and the other one began 2 to 3 weeks later.
Yeah, more or less.
I think it was even 2 weeks, maybe.
Could well have been 2 weeks, yeah, because obviously that was when the French Open moved.
Definitely Hamburg before, right? Like before
Hamburg
the French,
and
there was
Rome.
Hamburg and Rome.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe just 2 weeks. Well, 2 or 3 anyway.
I mean, but it was pretty much on the men's side, at least. I don't think anyone, if deep is the quarterfinals, did anyone go deep in both?
I think Zverev lost in the 4th round to Sinner, so I guess it wouldn't be him.
Yeah, I guess Zverev was close, but
and Djokovic had the default, so no, I think he came the closest.
Yeah, I mean, basically, but even Dominic, I think Dominic's loss was 4th round, wasn't it, to Schwartzman, or was it quarterfinals?
Quarters.
I think it was the same day as Sinner played Nadal. Anyway, let's go back slightly anyway to that 2020 year for Dominic, because it was just the peak, but the fall from the cliff or from grace, as Nerland references, but in a slightly different form in the chat. The 2020 year began in Australia. Is it fair to say, Vanch, that 2020 Australia was perhaps even higher level than 2020 US Open from Dominic Thiem?
Oh yeah, yeah. In terms of quality of play, it definitely was. Just because I mean, obviously the manner in which the final was between Zverev and Thiem, you can't argue the level
Yeah.
at all. I mean, I think their semi-final was actually very good in Australia when they played Zverev and Thiem.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, you had those really good matches against Nadal and Zverev, and earlier in the tournament he was down 2-1 against Alex Bolt as well, and then he comes back and
Oh, yeah.
wins that in 5. I think he loses a set to Fritz in the next round. He beats Monfils. So it looked like he was on the verge of almost beating 4 top 10 players in a row to win his first major at the Australian Open. I mean, he goes 2-1 up against Djokovic. Respectable last 2 sets, but maybe a slight opportunity missed there. He had a couple of break points, and I remember at the start of the 4th when Djokovic was still, not physically right. But then Novak being Novak regroups and then wins the 5th. But it was a fine effort, like 6-4 in the 5th. So, but I'll always remember that because he won 3 tiebreaks against Rafa in the quarterfinals. I mean, and I guess 5 the whole year because you also have to count the really high quality straight sets win at the ATP finals. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that year he was the second best player in the world. I think the rankings won't show it, but he was definitely top 2.
Yeah, I mean, he reached a career high of 3, and I'm pretty sure it was that year. Are there any what-ifs, though, for Dominic in that final against Djokovic, Damien?
Not really to me, because the 2 sets that Novak lost, he was like absolutely, unable to play in. We didn't really know what was happening at the time. I don't know if we do right now. But yeah, to me, it was just like a massive dip in quality from Novak. It didn't really feel like the final was that competitive outside of these 2 sets. But yeah, certainly the way he played up until that moment, that was probably better than his US Open campaign. Although I think because of the final against Zverev, people sometimes also forget, for example, the Medvedev match in the semis. Daniil at the time was coming off of a final at the US Open in 2019. He had so many hardcourt rounds already, was already perceived as a hardcourt specialist, and to beat him in 3 sets there, that was just pretty insane. And I guess we in general have this big elephant in the room here to talk about because, well, for years, as one of you already said, like Thiem was just regarded as a clay specialist, and yet when we look at his legacy right now, I mean, US Open hardcourts, ATP 1000, Indian Wells hardcourts. How is that possible?
Yeah, right. I mean, you got Indian Wells, as you say, 2019. You got US Open win 2020. You got that Australian Open, performances that he pulled off, and then also the ATP finals. Yeah, pretty much because of the gap between him and Rafa, at least one of those 2 French Open finals. We're kind of probably the absolute highlight reel of trophies lifted and performances probably were on hard courts, Vanch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like sort of 2018 onwards, I think I can point to like one match that really made me think like, yeah, he can win big titles on hardcourt. And that was the loss to Nadal, right? In the 2018 US Open quarterfinal, which he loses 7-6 in the 5th. I think he won the first set 6-love. And then after that, the next 4 sets were really good from both. But even though he lost that match, that was kind of a hint that like, okay, he can actually adapt his game really well to the hard courts. And then he wins Indian Wells the next year. He wins like at the end of the year, he does really well post US Open, like wins Beijing, wins Vienna, gets to the finals of the ATP finals. And then it's like when 2020 Australian Open happened, it wasn't really a shock, right? It wasn't like, oh wow, he's in the final of a hard court slam. It seemed very much expected at that point.
Yeah.
So like his evolution on hard courts was interesting because I did feel like he made some technical improvements. The slice got a lot better. He shortened the forehand a little bit more, when it was coming at a really, really fast pace. He was able to absorb it a bit better. He was at one point the best returner on the second serve. Like he was doing a lot of things like to make his game more imposing, more damaging inside the baseline earlier in points. And I felt like he deserves a lot of credit for that, like 2018 US Open till 2020 ATP finals, where he was right up there on hard courts, at times doing better on hard than clay for sure.
And Nicolas Bassou probably deserves a lot of credit for that as well, because obviously Thiem was a Ginter Bresnik product from like when he was 9-8 years old or something like that. And I mean, in the first few years of when he was an elite player, he would just like heavily overplay in the first half of the season, and then second half of the season he would get like 10 wins. And when he was playing indoors, he was just like pretty funny, like I don't know, 3 meters behind the baseline, and playing exactly the same. Whatever the ball is, even if it's mid-court, he's going to play the same shot every single time. And that's actually kind of something that I think Shevchenko, who was, of course, the next Brestnik product, had. And that's a pretty funny kind of way of seeing how, okay, yeah, I'm sure the guy crafts some fantastic players, but there was a moment when Thiem was not satisfied, and Thiem wanted to try something different, and that worked out very well. Of course, the hardcore improvement was already starting with Brestnik, I can't deny that. But yeah, making his strokes more compact and adjusting to different conditions without playing the same style every single time, just 3 meters behind the baseline, blasting his shots. The way that he was playing against Novak, for example, in that famous ATP Finals match, when he's literally just hitting with the same power, but actually within the baseline, standing in the court. That's something that was not available to him in the previous days. And it's still surprising to this day, but it also can be attributed to the Nadal effect, that he has the big titles on hard courts, but he doesn't have them on clay. And also keen team memorable doubles runs with Diego Schwartzman, Madrid final, but otherwise he was not really a doubles player. But that was pretty good because, of course, we already knew at the time that they are good friends, and I think there was just good vibes all around.
Team, of course, on grass was never a thing, Vanch.
Yeah, I think his best run at Wimbledon. Well, I mean, he did win Stuttgart. He beat Federer and saved those match points, and then wins the final. And so in 2016, he does have a grass title. So I guess that's something he can hold high, has had high. And but I mean, the Wimbledon, I think 2017, he got to the fourth round, lost in 5 to Berdych. That was the furthest he ever got. So, and then I think 2019 he plays Sam Querrey really tight for like 2 sets, like they split tie breaks. And then after that, Sam goes on and wins, and then gets to the quarters. But he never really unfortunately, we never really got that apart from this famous match right here.
Why was that, do you think, Damien?
I mean, yeah, when he won against Roger in 2016 and took that title, I think he also played okay in Halle, maybe, or well, he probably lost first round to like Zverev or something like that, but it was a good match anyway, and it didn't seem like it would be the case. But yeah, I mean, in the next years, he kind of just took over the same role as like Tsitsipas, when he was a threat to win any tournament, really. But then when the grass rolled around, no one was looking at him at all. I mean, definitely not a surface that like suits his game naturally. And I guess even though he made that indoor step up, he made the fast hardcourt step up. Grass, well, you don't get that much practice on it, right? He only played like
grass in 2020
or 1 year, 2 matches a year, something like that.
Go on, Vanch, sorry.
No, I was just saying no grass season in 2020. Otherwise, maybe we could have seen something.
Yeah, but like even after 2017, he was just like playing 1 or 2 matches a season on grass courts. So yeah, we didn't really get to see that, I suppose. That 2016 season, that was, of course, no, actually he made the semis in Halle that year, so I was right the first time. But anyway, yeah, that was simply what I was trying to say. That like after 2017, we actually barely got him playing on grass courts. He only played Wimbledon 3 more times and won. Well, actually, never won a round after 2017. So yeah.
Vanch, what do you remember about his US Open run to the final? I mean, a lot is remembered, I think, about the final, but for one reason or another, that tournament obviously was dominated by Djokovic and the expulsion that he had, and Nadal's absence, and the no crowds, and COVID, and a million other things. But it was also ultimately dominated by the narrative of the men's final. What do you remember about what happened with Thiem before that?
Well, I remember he was not coming in super high on confidence because he'd lost to Filip Krajinovic 2-1 in the US Open Cincinnati, right? So that was
okay.
That was like just
do you remember the stats? Because it was some crazy unforced errors. I don't remember, like 33 in 13 games or something, or 15 games or something like that.
That's not going to elevate him to bookies' favorite status for sure.
No, but then I think everyone, I think there were like 2 thoughts. One was like, okay, I think that's a total outlier result. You can just throw it in the garbage. That's like 1 in 200 or something like that happens. And then the other was like, oh, actually, actually maybe this hiatus, because he was playing a lot during the pandemic. Like he was playing all those exhibitions and he was playing a ton of matches. So that's why it made it very surprising that he just had that out of the loss. But nonetheless, like he comes. I remember the Cilic match because that one, Cilic won that third set, and then there were it was a few tight moments in the fourth set where it could have potentially, if he wasn't careful, it could have gone 5. But then when he beat Felix quite comprehensively last 2 sets, and then the performance against de Minaur was really very clinical. That's when I was like, okay, like this, he should win the title from here. Obviously, Djokovic had lost then, or he had the default in the fourth round to Carreño Busta. And then, but the Medvedev match that Damien referenced earlier, that was the one where, like, sets 2 and 3 in particular, like to win both those sets the way he did, because he was down, and I think Medvedev served for the third, and Medvedev was even quite better for most of the second. So, like, these were not sets that that I would have thought he would have won both. Like, definitely, I thought it was going 4 or 5 for sure. The fact that he won that in 3, really, really tight, in a really tight fashion, and then played a really good third set breaker. That's when that's what I think that gets overlooked because of the final for sure.
The actually, you say that after his win over de Minaur that he should go on and win the title, but I thought there was a nice balance to the semi-finals, because wasn't it Carreño Busta against Zverev on the other side? And did that go 4 or 5? 5, exactly.
That was a horrible match. I mean, Zverev was on the way to the final. He was just the matches he played against Coric and Carreño Busta. Maybe young me was stupid. Maybe I just didn't know better or something like that. But I actually remember thinking that, like, Medvedev has this in the bag. This is his title. I don't know. Maybe it was just the hype from the 2019 trophy. Of course, as Vansh mentioned, we didn't really have that much like intel on players' forms, really, because of course in 2019 Medvedev was running into the US Open so high after Washington, Canada, Cincy, and everything. 2 losses in 3 events, and both in the finals. And here we didn't have anything really. I just checked it.
Cincinnati, though, didn't he?
Errors.
I think Medvedev won Cincinnati that year, or the
No,
fake.
he lost to Bautista Agut, I think, in the quarters.
So who won?
He also was pretty. Djokovic won it. It was the New York edition, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was thinking like Medvedev has it in the bag. So for me to see Thiem beating him in 3, I just remember being so shocked. And that was perhaps a bigger upset in my head than it actually was. But at the time, I just remembered being absolutely stunned.
Going into that final against Zverev, I don't know. I saw it as being 50-50. I without being clever after the event, and with Zverev, actually, it doesn't sound that clever after the event, because I think everyone kind of would think this. The mental demons that Sasha can have on big occasions might get the better of him, and they pretty much did. Dominic, though, was also somebody probably that we thought was maybe a bit more reliable on that side, but. I mean, I was going to say for 2 sets, but maybe even for 5 sets, even Dominic was still a long way from what we would expect. And the occasion, despite having no fans, Vanch, seemed to get to both players. In the end, it was just a case of who's going to fall first.
Yeah, like I remember the first couple of sets, Zverev came out like serving great, and he wasn't having to hit many second serves, which is where the problems were happening for him, like leading up to the tournament, or leading up to the finals rather. And Thiem was very patchy, just very nervous, like overhitting a ton. I remember Zverev just being really solid from the baseline, like and having a really high first serve percentage. I'd have to double check that, but I think it was like I think it was Zverev serving really, really well in the first 2 sets, and so he goes up 6-2. Actually, he goes up 6-2, 5-1, and then Thiem managed to make the second set somewhat competitive at the very start. Maybe that was an indication already that the match was about to change. But then Zverev was also up a break in the third. And then that's when the mess just starts from there, right? From both guys. And then somehow, we get to the 5th, which was fitting, I guess. And then Zverev serving for it at 5-3. And then you remember after that, the double faults. But I will say at the end, like both guys were really, really, really nervous and really, really tense, cramping. But Thiem was the one going for it a bit more. And he was going after his forehand. He was like actually like taking the initiative, like, in those rallies. And Zverev, we saw sort of the mental.
I mean, but at the same time, he didn't hit a topspin backhand for like the last 10 minutes. He was just slicing everything. So
But I think
Maybe
there was
of
this
the
one
fourth
point where there were like 3 occasions where Zverev was 2 points away from winning, but I still remember these like back-to-back forehand winners that team hit to make it 5-all, which then I was like, okay, he's at least like a little bit more normal here. Like maybe this will
I mean,
be the case.
at that point,
But
he
then in the
didn't, he
tiebreak,
hadn't hit a slice backhand for the last 10 minutes. So I don't
yeah,
know.
but then in the tiebreak when he didn't win that point after Zverev hit the
A top spin
66
backhand,
per
I
hour
mean, yeah.
second serve, that's when I was like, okay, never mind. Actually, this is really, really hard to call.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, Vanch. What was that about? A second serve. Sorry.
I think like team missed the return when Zverev hit one of the 66 mile per hour second serves, and that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this is getting really, really a tough
Would you have
watch.
missed that return, Damien?
I would have to see the serve, but I mean, I can imagine it. I remember what Zverev's second serve used to look like at the time.
Yeah.
If I was playing a Grand Slam final, I would probably miss it. Yes, generally, there's no reason to miss it. But yeah, I
No.
think actually going into the match, Thiem was perceived as a pretty big favorite, and that was solely based on him being a beast in that event, and Zverev just like stumbling his way to the final, more or less. I mean, even the draw he had, right? Choric, Carreño Busta, and yeah, just the mess that he was already in these quarterfinals and semifinals. But of course, in the end, it just ended up being a very nervy affair from both. Zverev not really for 2 sets and a bit, but after that, that finish will definitely remain legendary. And I mean, to this day, we have Zverev lacking a Grand Slam title, so it actually pops up from time to time because of that as well. Because people just say, "Well, this was his shot and he missed it," and who knows? Maybe they are right.
Thank goodness that Vanch, thank goodness Dominic Thiem won that day. I mean, probably we definitely didn't realize that. There was no prediction of Dominic Thiem's demise, and it was so rapid in 2021 and 2022. Thank goodness for him and arguably for tennis too, Vanch. He did get that US Open title. As disappointing. I will say this, probably 2 or 3 years ago, people would mention about there being no crowds, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. But now looking back, probably it would have been 10%, 20%. I don't know, a larger percentage nicer for Dominic to have had a crowd there. But anyway, thank goodness he did get over the line.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, having the crowd there would have been like, I mean, that's pretty jarring in a way to win your last ever title. First of all, his last ever title is a slam. I guess that's a parallel that he also has.
Yeah,
with
he only had 2 finals. So his last 2 finals were the US Open final and the ATP Tour finals, I think. But yeah, his last ever.
No, he had the final in Kitzbühel, actually. That was
his yes.
notable result. I think he beats Jerry in the semis and then loses to Baez in the final because he just had nothing left. But, but yeah, I mean, I think that's always going to be the moment because like no crowd of pandemic major didn't have to face any of the big 3, but yet but that doesn't take anything away from the accomplishment, right? Because he had so many wins against the big 3 and so many big matches already that but it's to say that he could have beaten one of them to win this one. But
this tournament as well, it's not quite Sebi Korda. I'm one of the favorites for Wimbledon levels, but Zverev did make a quote just not long after, within probably a few hours or a day or so after Djokovic's demise, said, well, now why aren't I, a contender? Why? This is our moment. This is our time to strike, as in like the rest of the field. I mean, it was actually a very frank answer from Sasha to say that, but it would obviously come back to kind of bite him in terms of that final.
Well, not really, because like even if you look at this photo, like both of these guys, this was their best shot. They had some other.
Exactly. No, it was frank. It was fair. I mean, he got a bit
true,
of that. Yeah, absolutely. Although when you say you look at this photo, if you take the trophies away, if you just switch the trophies, by the way, and put one in one, it wouldn't be out of place to look at Dominic's face and suggest that he's just lost. I think that's where the crowd might come in, where he might have
like neither of them looks particularly pleased, to be honest.
I think it was just relief at the end, like just wow. I mean, thank God that mess is over, and now I finally achieved my dream at 27 years of age.
Did Dominic's celebration? Does anyone remember? Was he rolling around on the ground? And probably not.
I think he fell to the ground for sure.
I think he fell to the ground. Yeah,
I think he fell to the ground. Okay.
I think so on his back. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they did actually ignore COVID protocols for this one and shake hands and like properly.
Oh, I think
greet
they may
each
even
other.
have embraced. Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
And
yeah.
actually, there's a quote right now from Thiem that's kind of been floating around about like, I thought that this was gonna change my life, but it didn't. I'm not saying that if the crowds were there, then it would have, but it's also pretty funny to think about this. That I mean, fun, not really funny. I don't know why I said that word, but like, yeah, that Thiem thought that the Grand Slam title, it would just like change everything in his entire life, and yeah, it just doesn't. After a while, it's I picked that up. It's amazing, sure. But after 2 months, you're not gonna be just sitting every day and thinking, I've got that slam title now. And
Yeah.
also, Kim, don't talk about these losses. I mean, I have the same issue as you actually, because I keep thinking of like team losses, like Ramkumar Ramanathan in Antalya when he beat him, or Rusvuori crushed him at Davis Cup. But that's actually what it is with the elite players, I guess. We don't really remember their wins of like, I don't know, we don't remember their random wins in US Open third round, for example, but we remember when someone beat them, because that's a story then.
Yeah. I wonder if people will remember Rafa getting beaten by Borges, or they'll remember the 14.
I think there's a certain 200,000 followers journalist on Twitter who will make sure that they do.
Oh yeah, but that's fair. He's a Portuguese, so that's okay. I thought you were going to say there's a certain person with I don't know how many thousand followers of a Novak persuasion that might. But anyway, he mentioned his incredible journey. I think we've touched on pretty much most of the significant stops. There's been a few sort of Del Potro thoughts today, Vanch, with obviously winning one Grand Slam, also a US Open title, also a few what ifs and if onlys and kind of regrets. Do you see that and understand that sort of comparison? And both playing aggressively, albeit very differently.
Well, I will say that for Del Potro, I mean, that was the most unfortunate because he was actually like properly robbed of like 5 or 6 years of his career, where like like immediately after the US Open, like that whole 2010, like a ton of years in the 2010s where he just physically like could not play. Of course, he made a comeback. He got to number 3 in the world. He like revised his game, but that didn't really happen with Thiem. I mean, for Thiem, it was like a decade long of like chasing a major, and then when it finally happened, then there was this like release, like emotionally, and then the injuries came, and so it's like I don't know if it's really that fair to compare them, but in terms of like the tennis fans, in terms of like how much they're adored and respected, like I can see that comparison because they both won a major at the US Open, and also like they're amongst most of the big 3 fan bases, they're pretty popular, I think, like universally, Thiem and Delpo. But maybe it's more kind of like an Andy Murray thing where you like get to the summit and then eventually then you just have like this one injury and then you're just never the same again. So I think it's actually more of a Murray comparison than a Delpo comparison.
Dominic did also mention a couple of times that there was a slight motivational issue for him post US Open. And I think we probably looked at that a little bit more than we did the wrist injury for a while, but now that's kind of disappeared a bit. I've written 3 names down, all of which have been very quickly mentioned in succession. And they're the only 3 players. So there's often people talk about, well, obviously the big 3, but also, don't forget the big 4, don't forget Andy. And of course, there's no doubt that from what are we looking at with Andy, 2013 to 2016? Is that about right in terms
2012,
of 2012? Yeah. All right, give him another year then. We'll give him another year for you, Vanch.
No, I mean, he won the US Open and Olympics that year, so you have to include the year.
Yeah, fair enough, especially towards the end of that year, from post-Wimbledon. Delpo though comes and goes. He sort of walks. Delpo's that guy in the GIF that you see on The Simpsons, where the guy walks in, puts his hat on the thing, and then takes it and walks out again. And Delpo did that from time to time for about the best part of a decade. Dominic Thiem though, he is also someone that also was. He made it a big 4 for a bit shorter period of time, Vanch, than Andy, but
well, the thing is that his peak was just too short, right? Like it was just 2019 and 2020, really. I mean, those are the 2 years when you think of all the big team wins, and I guess all the clay court wins that he had over Rafa before. Like he was a top 8 guy since 2016, and then really like a top 3 guy like for the last 2, 2019 and 2020. But I guess he's also the only player apart from Andy who has 5+ wins against each of the three. So I think that's pretty big. That he beat them all 5+ times each. I mean, he won like 5 of his last 7 against Djokovic, 5 of his last 6 against Federer. Obviously, he has the 4 wins outside of Roland Garros against Rafa, and then the
Yeah, his head
5
to head
breaks
is
in a row that he won.
his
So the
head to
head-to-head
head
is pretty is crazy. Like 5-2 against Roger, like 5-7 against Djokovic. I think 6-10 against Rafa. But it's like, yeah, that's a lot of big wins. I wish. I mean, as certainly a lot of his fans wish that he would have converted more of those to big titles. Of course, you got the Indian Wells and you got that, but like for instance, the Madrid one where he beats Rafa and then he gets to the final. Those 2 Madrid finals, I think those are the ones, because he didn't win a single big title on clay. So that's one where certainly you wouldn't have expected that when his career would have finished. But as we discussed, I mean, he made a lot of adaptations to become really good on hard court. And
So
and
it's
also the ATP finals as well. I mean, he was so close to winning that against Medvedev. I think just one like serve and volley that Medvedev came up with on a break point down, in the second set, and otherwise maybe, yeah, I mean, he would have potentially served for the match, or maybe it was 2 holes away at that point. So that's probably one. And because those 2019, 2020, he played so many great matches against Djokovic and Federer and Nadal, and he beat the big 3 in those 2 editions. But then he fell just short in the final in both occasions.
I would like to know, and I probably will work it out, but it'll probably have to be post-show, the head-to-heads of Delpo versus the big 3 and Murray's against the big 3, because I've already very quickly worked out Dominic Thiem's 16-19, so he's won almost 50% of their encounters against the big 3 collectively. I'm sure that
I think I
one.
can
Yeah,
tell
it's
you
not
that
gonna be
without
it's not
looking
gonna
him
be
up.
quite like that for Del
But
Potro,
it
but
won't be
you
like
know,
that because against Djokovic it was pretty lopsided. He was like 4-16 against Djokovic.
yeah.
And I
But
think
you can
like,
also make the case, obviously, that Delpo was playing them at a much tougher
Absolutely.
period.
And
you
the
know.
5-2
Yeah.
that team has over Federer is obviously pretty much in the latter stages of Federer's
Yeah.
career. I saw you roll your head like this, Damien, a minute or two ago, but I can't remember what that was in reaction to. I think maybe it was the Delpo team sort of thoughts and stuff like this.
Maybe it was just something completely different. Maybe I was just watching the end of Kastikowski against Edmund in Sioux Falls, actually. But
Edmund's in action, is he?
yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of guys who kind of like got destroyed by injuries, but yeah, I think I was just gonna sort of turn on my Vanch mode and say that they both won Indian Wells, beating Federer in the final in back-to-back years, Thiem and Del
There you go.
Potro, and yeah, it makes sense. It's certainly a pretty different story, but it's good that they both got that one slam. And yes, certainly they are uber popular even among the fans of the players that they kind of made struggle.
Keen asking, what do you Keen aka Nick Kyrgios fanboy is asking us, what do we think is the head-to-head between Dominic Thiem and Nick Kyrgios without checking?
I want to say 1-0 without checking, but I could be.
Can't be just that one match, right? Didn't
No,
they
I'm
play
guessing that Kyrgios has won, has got
it's-
the head-to-head done. Otherwise, Keen wouldn't ask.
But I don't remember any Kyrgios
I
win
don't.
over
No.
Thiem, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I think that's the only time they played, but I'll look it up.
Okay,
later.
maybe it's unusual that he would ask.
I would say
Keen,
there's like one or two more, but I can't point to it at all.
in response,
Maybe juniors. They did grow up together, I think.
Okay.
It's possible.
In response to a Keen question in the live chat, for me, it does make sense that he had that Sunday sort of farewell. It was a great way of adding a day on the tournament and adding sort of more interest for the local public. And you're not going to get quite that big a ceremony for him after the match because there's other matches to come, including, of course, Draper, I think, was in action against Nishioka, among others, today. So for me, I have no problem with them having almost a day dominated by Dominic in many respects, and so much so that he actually got an extra 500 points mysteriously on the ATP website. Don't know if you saw that, Vanch?
I did see that. Was that just a mistake, or is that just something?
It was just a glitch.
I still don't know.
I don't think it was.
It actually wasn't a glitch properly. I can explain that a bit because that match, the exhibition, was live scored. So after the live scores, basically Zverev got added 330 points for being the finalist. and Thiem got
Oh.
added 500. But then they removed
I didn't know
the
this.
Zverev
It's
error.
still a glitch of some sort. It's just not technical. It's just odd.
Yeah, they removed that Zverev error, but apparently the team one stayed on. And personally, like I have to say, I think Bastian, he's not stupid. He knew exactly what he was doing. And obviously he still hasn't deleted that tweet. And his sort of like him saying that, oh, I refreshed and now it's different. Like 10% of the people who saw the original tweet saw that. And that's all I have to say
how's
about
he
this.
involved in this whole chain of events? I'm confused. Sorry.
You probably saw it, via his tweet, which was like,
Probably,
I've never
yeah.
seen this before. They have awarded Dominic Thiem 500 points so he can retire as a top 100 player or something like that. I mean, come on. He knew exactly that this is not the case, and this has to be a mistake.
Yeah.
And well, it's at this point it's just spreading misinformation for clicks.
Yeah. Damien is sad that another one-hander is retiring. Well, I don't know. Maybe Damien. I know you hit with a one-hander yourself.
I
But
don't know if Thiem was like particularly my favorite style of one-hander, but I mean I did enjoy his game. I just think I've really gotten used to the thought of Dominic Thiem being, well, an afterthought, if you may, for the past few years. It's not one of these retirements that kind of hits you hard because, well, the last few years Dominic Thiem wasn't Dominic Thiem.
yeah, have you got a favorite match of his, Vanch, away from, let's say, Grand Slams and ATP finals? Because I think it's very easy for us to highlight some of those. But is there one? I know you mentioned your early memory of him against Stan. Is there another one that sticks out for you? Didn't you have an epic against Rafa in Barcelona?
I think that was just a straight set win in 2019. But yeah, I mean, of course, the Nadal matches stand out. I mean, but I would say I would actually go for his run in Vienna in 2019. Like that whole week,
Yeah.
he played some really good tennis, even though it wasn't against like big three players. I remember him beating like Berrettini, Verdasco, like some tough opponents that he had like kind of struggled against. Verdasco was like notoriously one of his toughest opponents, and like
Yeah.
and then I think like he beat Tsonga, he beat Verdasco, he beat Berrettini, he beat Schwartzman in the final, which was a really well played final indoors. And this was sort of like, I remember this because it was the same day that Federer won his last title as well in Basel. And like I think it's really good for him that he got that chance to win Kitzbühel and Vienna in his most successful season in terms of titles won.
Did he win
So I'd probably
Kitzbühel
go
the
for
same
that
year?
whole run. Yeah, he did in 2019.
Okay.
So
I mean,
it's pretty
yeah,
fitting that he's retired here. Actually,
he's ticked quite a few boxes, really. I mean, if you're a tennis player, you would like to win a Grand Slam, you'd probably like to get to world number one. That box didn't quite get ticked, but you'd probably also like to win a tournament in your own backyard. And I think Damien highlighted that Vienna is actually 50 kilometers from where Dominic grew up today. So yeah, have you got one of you that you remember, Damien, away from the slams in particular?
Yeah, I kind of have this disease that I said earlier that like when I'm thinking of team matches, it's mostly the losses that come to mind. But like I don't know, maybe Madrid against Federer was really fun. I was at the time remember hoping that Djokovic was gonna play Federer in the next round. I mean, Roger in 2019 was actually really good in the clay season, but Dominic saves too much points and it's a really high quality match all around. I mentioned that one against Rafa earlier in Buenos Aires, just remember watching that and everything. But yeah, maybe if I'm thinking of like a peak performance of Dominic Thiem that I really like was it's that Medvedev match that we mentioned at the US Open. I actually have to see like some highlights of it or something. I before today I probably hadn't thought of that match since it happened, and now I'm kind of just reminiscing that, and maybe that's my favorite.
I have watched the quarterfinal against Nadal at the Australian Open. Couple of obviously when it happened, but at least one more time since, just because I know that Nadal was serving for the first set. I still think Thiem was just. I was going to say redlining. Redlining's harsh because redlining sounds like this is just a guy, doing a one-off performance out of his skin. It was a match I'd circled as soon as the draw was made, as in I think this is where Rafa's going out. I think many people had done that. That's how good Dominic was at the time. But when I say redlining, I mean it in the best possible sense. He was just playing out of this world, and everything he was doing was just turning to gold, and there was not much that Rafa could do about it. There was one, of course, point where I think Dominic Thiem falls over and still manages to win the point. There were a couple of net chords that say this that went Dominic's way, and there was a few jitters, I think, right near the end of the match, particularly in the tiebreak, which ultimately Dominic won. But that performance,
he also served for the match and then got broken.
the match, and that's where the jitters began, and maybe Nadal fans probably going into that tiebreak thought, oh, okay, now this could go 5. But in the end, he did get over the line, and he was the better player that day. I mean, although Rafa was serving for the first set, it was kind of a weird situation where Rafa just got the break from nowhere despite not looking comfortable on his serve. And then there's the 7-6, 7-6 match that the two had indoors in the ATP Tour Finals in London. I know that Carlos was very effusive about this earlier on WhatsApp, saying it's one of the best, straight sets wins he's ever seen. It was certainly up there in the matches of that particular year, despite being straight sets. And then there's that performance against Novak as well in the semi-finals. I don't know if you've got a favorite amongst those ones, Vanch.
I think I just enjoyed all of them individually. I think the Djokovic one I just remember because he was 4-love down in the tiebreak, and to win 7 of the last 8 points the way that he did was just because he hit like 5 winners in those 8 points, and it was just like phenomenal stuff, like just back against the wall, like just going for a backhand on the line that he had just no business even attempting, let alone making it. And then like just the way that because Djokovic that year was just dynamite in tiebreaks. I think he was like 15-2 or 15-1 like that year, and then like he just that was when he sort of got that reputation, like 2019, 2018, or like onwards, where he just would not lose tiebreaks. And so it took that special level for a team to like win that, and that was also no crowd because of the ATP finals. There were no fans, I think.
Yeah,
but they had like these like fan replicas like just in the crowd making noise. It wasn't real. Like
it was weird.
Imagine telling someone, like some other tennis fan, about this in 20 years, that they had like literally some
I remember the US Open, you just saw people doing this because I think they just said like, send us 5 seconds of you waving, and they did that. And so just, I think they were being played at the US Open throughout the match, right? Or I think they were in the background. Certainly I saw them at changeovers and stuff, and you just had
wild times.
Yeah, wild times indeed. But yes, Dominic Thiem winning 17, I think it is, titles altogether, and reaching a peak of world number 3, as well as obviously winning the US Open, has now officially hung up his racket, as we saw in this picture behind. He said that there wouldn't be any tears, and there weren't, because he's not that kind of guy, but I also think it was sort of a fairly long, drawn-out process that we've just sort of been waiting for this day to come. In terms of the match, Damien, I don't know if you saw any of it or caught it. I mean, he was a break-up in the first set, probably should have won it. I think he was 5-2 up in the tie-break, but let it go. I think that tie-break got away from him as well, or at least one of the breaks happened in the second set because he got a little bit careless on the backhand aggression, shall we say, and there was a few that went long. And ultimately, indoor hard court specialist Darderi emerged the winner, and he will play Jack Draper in the next round. I did say any other business in terms of this podcast, so I would like to tie up a few loose ends. Jack Draper winning in straight sets over Nishikori earlier. It was a super, super tight first set, which could have gone either way, but in the end went the way of the Brit, and then he did emerge winning that one in straight sets. James said, what an amazing match. I don't know if it was quite that amazing, James, but perhaps he's of a Draper persuasion. By the way, what's Cam Norrie up to these days, Vanch? Is he off the tour? Oh no, he's been playing some.
No, he played today. He lost to Tiafoe today in Vienna.
Where?
Vienna.
In Vienna. Yeah, he lost to Tiafoe today.
The match before Thiem.
Couple tight sets.
Yeah. So I see. Well, that's
his least favorite part of the tour, indoor hard courts.
What's going on with his picture on Google here? He's got a picture of an Alessi headband here. Don't know if you can see this very well, but Google doesn't update their pictures that often. But then, having said that, I've sometimes Googled a player from outside the top 200, and there's a picture of Novak Djokovic. on their profile. So at least they've got him, albeit a very young Cam Norris. So he lost in straight sets to Tiafoe. Any other standout thoughts from Vienna today? I should share that picture on the screen, actually. Any other standout thoughts from today in Vienna, Damien?
I don't know. I mean, you mentioned 3 matches already. I think there were only like 2 more. Deminor beat Struff, which of course was, well, quite crucial in the sense that he's still fighting for that Turin qualification, but he's a little, well, he's not fit. Struff wasn't fit either, so it ended up being a bit of a mess. I think Koboli is going to give him a hard time for sure. I think Kecmanovic beat another fellow indoor specialist, Navone. Actually, I think there were 8 matches as a whole in Vienna today, not 6. But yeah, I think you pretty much covered it with the main court. Team Darderi, I actually couldn't see. I saw a bullet that Team hit off his backhand down the line at like 1-2 in the first set or something like that. That made me smile. Yeah, it made me smile when I saw it.
Oh, it made you smile, Damien.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was a smile, but I definitely remember watching it, and I had like a reaction to it. I was like, yeah, I like that. And also, I think I just remember someone telling me about the volley that he missed. I'm pretty interested though about the behavior of Darteri that Keane mentioned, that Jose was not happy with it.
There was something. I had the volume down. But there was something between him and the umpire.
I know that he was getting called for foot faults. So I think he got called for 2 foot faults in the tiebreak, and then
but that foot fault. I also saw a video of one of the foot faults, and it was total BS.
So it was unfair.
Yeah, like I mean, unfair. It's a wrong call. Like there was also obviously a very important wrong call today in the Shelton Echeverry match in Basel.
Yes,
and I mean, I don't blame the umpire because he clearly didn't see it clearly He didn't see it clearly because of the right leg of Echeverry.
Sure.
And I can understand that totally. It's more the fault of the system. So I also don't blame an umpire for in this case probably for calling that foot fault. But yeah, I mean, clearly the one that I watched, at least
there were multiple, right? There were 2 in the tiebreak, and then there was 1 in the second set, I think.
The one that I watched, it clearly wasn't right to me. Keen Peak Edmund, super heavy forehand, one of the heaviest on tour.
Yeah.
On clay, it was incredible. The set he took against Rafa in Monte Carlo once. Woo.
Sorry, just having a quick look at this. I have seen it already, of course, but I'm trying to get a screenshot of Echeverry's incident today. Yeah, just quickly regarding Jose Morgado. Jose Morgado, maybe he likes to take the popular line, if you like, and just seeing Darderi complain to the umpire during Dominic Thiem's last match, it's a very easy thing to say. Well, Darderi is a prickly guy in some respects, but I didn't think he was that bad today. But yeah, this is the incident in the Echeverry match, and so for those of you that haven't seen it, basically the umpire thinks the ball hits his right leg, which we can see in this image at least, is inside the court. But in fact, it does bounce without touching his right leg out of the court and then ultimately ricochet off his left leg.
No, I mean, I think that the umpire thought it hit his left leg, right?
His left leg in this picture it did hit his left leg.
Yeah, and I think that's what the umpire saw. He just didn't see the ball bounce because of his right leg. That's the way I interpret the situation. And yeah, I mean, it's a wrong call, but it was literally obstructing his view. So it's definitely more of a system flaw rather than actually, who was it, Gabas? I think it was Gabas.
Is that the same umpire that got hit with the
Shapovalov? Yeah.
The eye with the Shapovalov. Yeah, okay. That's the same guy.
Got hit with what?
Shapovalov got defaulted against Kyle Edmund, actually, in Davis Cup years ago for literally just like trying to blast the ball out of the court and it hit the umpire in the eye. It was pretty graphic, yeah.
Keen, I enjoyed the Valencia Challenger immensely. And hi, Diggs, long time no see or hear. Chapeau, yeah. I think
he played and won today, actually. So it's a good segue.
Yeah. I think I have drawn some conclusions on him. Probably conclusions that other people came to a long time ago, but I think the chapeau train is done. Who's going to be the indoor Felix this year? If it's not going to be Felix,
Well, that's actually pretty hard to do. Like win 3 titles like he did in 2022.
so he won Basel, right?
Yeah,
In
he won
2022, and he
Florence
won
and Antwerp.
Antwerp.
Yeah, Florence, Antwerp, and then he made the semis of Paris.
Paris-Bercy, yeah.
16 matches in a row. I mean, technically, Tommy Paul qualifies kinda because he's actually 8-0 on indoor hardcourts this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he won Dallas as well, which is indoors.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same swing, but if he goes on to win Vienna,
could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Keen, you cannot tell me earlier that Kyrgios is the most underrated player ever, and then
I
say
know.
that Shapovalov is overrated. I mean, this is literally the same, flashy, but style over substance.
What about
type
Ben
of
Shelton?
playstyle.
What about Ben Shelton for an indoor double in Basel and Paris?
Why not?
Yeah. Or maybe he could call it the treble if you include UTS, Vanch.
Sure.
Did he win
No,
it?
but we're not going to include that. But
He
yeah.
did. But I don't think many people who were watching knew. I mean, there were full stadiums, but so that's a positive. But
what was his nickname? What was Ben Shelton's UTS name?
I should know.
It's like the mountain or something.
Oh yeah, the Mount. I think the Mount.
Yeah.
Or maybe the Mountain. Yeah, no, you're right. The Mountain. Ben Shelton.
I remember. I didn't watch it obviously this time, and I didn't watch it when he first played. But I just remembered seeing that nickname somewhere, and I was like, "What?"
Okay. Maybe the commander. Okay.
I know. Why is the commander? I mean,
should be like something with the piano, right? I don't know what's with Umber. I mean,
try and I basically said to Hugo, I mean, you're more or less. I paraphrase this, but I said you're a bit of an indoor specialist, and I think he sort of liked it and didn't like it at the same time. That I said that, but yeah, maybe Hugo. How did you? Oh, Hugo, of course. His match was yesterday, wasn't it? He won in 3
yeah, over Kim, of course. I did the watch along. I should remember.
Yeah, I know. But not only that, Damien, I left it at like 4-all in the second, thinking that Kim was hanging on, thinking this will be done. I think I even said, look, if this isn't done in the next 10 minutes, then you're gonna have to finish the stream. I couldn't believe it when it went 7-5 in the third.
Yeah, it was a weird match. I mean, Umber in the third set was like pretty tired, I think, and his body language was completely different to what you usually see. Like he was just like chatting to his box constantly. He was laughing at everything. He was just like so reactive to anything that was happening. You don't really see that whatsoever from him usually, and I don't know what that was all about. But then like 6-5, 6-5 in the third, he's leading, and suddenly he just changes up his strategy completely. He just moves back on the return, decides to let Kim play, and it worked like a charm. So, well, good play there. But I don't know. He was just like acting so weird in the last set. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, the second and third set were just like serving clinics. Both players, the sliced serve, just absolutely ungettable. And yeah, up until that last game when we had a complete change of pace, it was just a serving contest.
Oh wow! Looking at the schedule tomorrow in Vienna, there's quite a few fanboy things going on with both of you involved. Obviously, Makashima in an all-American affair against Tommy Paul. We've got Berrettini, Mahac, Marojan, and Zhang all playing as well on Team Damien. I feel like
that Berrettini narrative trying to push is ridiculous. I was just hyping him up at Wimbledon because he was underrated.
It was also because every time I said, "What match do you fancy tomorrow?" and you go, "Oh, I'll take the Berrettini one."
Because he was the big story there. I mean, he was the one that we expected could do something, and well, he played a phenomenal match against Sinner in the second round.
It was also post Wimbledon as well. I think there might have been some of that clay court season.
I mean, he won back-to-back titles there. So, but yeah, sure, I did a couple of matches. He won back-to-back titles in Kitzbühel-Stadt. So clearly it was.
That's why he became a fan. That's okay.
It was right to follow Berrettini's run. But yeah, Mahac Marojan is like my kids playing.
Oh yeah.
Together, so.
Oh yeah, and is Nakashima Paul as well a bit of a thing for you, Vanch? I mean, obviously we know Brandon, but you like Tommy too, right?
It's definitely a thing. Definitely, I'll try to wake up to watch this one tomorrow against Tony. Oh no, yeah, no. Okay. First of all, I think he has one of the better backhands on tour. Secondly, I don't think that's. Yeah, I get that he doesn't really, emote that much. He doesn't really give off that much like main character energy, of course.
No, but his
But somehow-
dismantling of Runa was fun. I thought, even if
Yeah,
I mean, some dismantlings are boring, but I felt that was fun, and I like Runa, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he has a very complete, like, fun game to watch. So, for me, and then plus also, just happen to know the family personally, so there's a little bit of that personal
There you
connection as
go.
well.
No mention of the Musetti match?
1 second before we mention that, do you know the Sabot Vilt family personally, Damien?
I mean, yeah, I probably wouldn't be let into his family because of our personal issues. Also, I mean, you might know them because they are probably from Germany. But anyway, yeah, that's really all I can say about the topic. But yeah, Vansh, I mean, I was shocked you didn't mention that Musetti match. That's your cue.
What? Hang on a second. Is this in Basel?
No. Nakashima Musetti at the US Open, which was one of the best matches of the season.
Yeah, no, one of the best individual sets, the fourth set comeback, from 4-love down on court 17. Amazing atmosphere. Probably, yeah. Actually, I do remember Gil Gross mentioning that as one of the best matches. So he did. I think he was actually there live for it.
Yeah, he was probably just at the match. Yeah, in which case you always kind of remember it, so well and everything.
Musetti Nakashima. Why can't I remember that match?
Because it was irrelevant. Vance just keeps mentioning it.
No, it was happening. I think it was happening the same time as Djokovic Popyrin. So I don't think a lot of people would have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was struggling.
I actually missed the Djokovic Popyrin part of it just to watch this.
I was really enjoying that Djokovic Popyrin match, and I was desperately trying to hang on, stay awake. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was to check the result. But yes, Musetti Nakashima had evaded me. Musetti, by the way, won an all-Italian affair against Sonego, so he's on his way, and we'll play Monfils in the next round. That'll be on Thursday. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up anything. Have I missed anything from today or tomorrow, you think, Damien?
This is the Vienna schedule. I'm actually not sure what the Basel schedule is like because I haven't checked it, but I mean, probably not. I think Wawrinka will finally try to beat Manarino. That's like a pretty surprising head-to-head. Although actually 2 of their 3 clashes, I think, happened much later in their careers. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know if there's anything super exciting tomorrow. Felix is the 2-time defending champion, but he's playing Baez, so he probably will win it.
Yeah, he'll win that one, I think. Yeah. Yeah. All right, then that's pretty cool. Have you got any more Brandon Nakashima comments, Vanch, to make, or have we done that segment of the show?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Although he has 3-0 against Tommy Paul at the ATP level. So
2019 he beat him. 2019 Tommy beat him at a challenger carry, I think.
No, but something I'm thinking that we should mention is that Sabalenka is now number 1.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Of course, there's a weird rankings quirk with that, right? With the points.
I don't know how I feel about that. I saw the tweet from not very well hidden eager fan. What's his name? Lives in Santiago.
Oh,
no.
Juan Ignacio.
Juan Ignacio, yeah. And it bothered him that she'd been elevated to world number 1 in the route that she did it, basically, and I don't know. It didn't strike too much of a chord with me, Vanch.
Yeah, no, I think it was just the quirk of the not playing the mandatories for both of them, and then
I think that seems weird to me anyway. Having a sport where you mandatory must play. and the 500s
I
thing.
think the main thing is it just takes away from some of the excitement for if you were looking at like the race going into the WTA finals of like it potentially coming down to the semis and the finals. Like that's not really a thing anymore. Like it could just end in the round robin stage and we might not have that race.
Oh
like we
yeah,
had.
yeah, right. I mean, I would love to see a shootout, but you can't
Yeah.
force those things. But just in terms of these, some of these quirks and these things that you know happens on the men's side, that there are mandatory tournaments, just doesn't make sense to me. You're just going to get people that are going to turn up and throw matches, or not give their best, or they're going to turn up injured and make it worse. And I don't know. I can't understand why anything should be mandatory in sport in that respect.
Because the tournaments want to make sure that they're gonna get the best field possible. It's the tournament organizers.
think the 20 is too
otherwise they
much.
might not commit. I think they are overrating the sort of potential effects that making all ATP thousands and WTA 1000s non-mandatory would actually have on the fields. I think they would all still be strong. All the players complaining about things being mandatory, they would still be playing the same calendar, I think. So yeah, they're probably overrating it, but yeah, that's probably the main reason why this sort of like can't really be introduced, at least not right away. Making everything non-mandatory.
I would make it non-mandatory and maybe try and lose a tournament or two, but there'll probably be too many upset people and maybe some dollar signs that suggest that could or shouldn't happen. But maybe there's a tournament or two that is just not making money and eventually will just disappear from our calendar. But yes, Sabalenka, world number one in terms of she just is.
Oh yeah, I mean, like she has been the best player, so there's no question about it because she has the 2 slams and she's won the, since Cincinnati, she's been like by far the best. So it was probably just
She
going to
was
happen.
gonna be
anyway.
number one in anyway, right? In a week.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it was
I
gonna
don't
happen
really
anyway.
see how what difference does it make that she's getting there 1 week earlier.
Well, for her at least, she did a comment quite amusingly, like, "How long can I hang on to it this time?" Because I think was it 9 weeks she held on to it before, but that's still 8 weeks more than did Rios have it for 1 week on the men's side?
No, Rios had it for
No,
more, but like
I
Rafter
think
maybe, or
Rafter, yeah, maybe Rafter only had it for a week.
I think Rafter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, and I'm sure she'll have
Rios
many
has
more.
another infamous record related to that, right? I mean,
Of
he's the
course,
only.
I know that record. Do you know the record, Vanch?
No, what is it?
It's you mean being number one without winning a slam?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I knew that. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So, a few more questions in the live chat. I don't know if you want to say anything about Bryce Nakashima, Vanch.
To be honest, I haven't been following him that much. But I do know he's made. Is he in the top 1,000? He might be, right? Like he does have a ranking. I don't know what it is, but he has been doing better as of late.
I do know about this mega controversy because I saw it on Twitter as well. Unless you've got a broken leg, I don't know why you wouldn't play that match point. I think he has a history.
Then you didn't see my tweet because, well, there is actually a reason.
Go on. What was it?
Basically, because of the late withdrawal penalty, late withdrawal fine. So the thing was that if Ugo Carabelli played his match, then in order to withdraw from the next week's event in Curitiba, he would have to either pay a $2,000 fine. It's usually 1,000, but 2,000 because he's a seeded player, or go to Curitiba and be examined by the doctor there. But when he retires or withdraws in Campinas, then the doctor in Campinas can actually examine him and the fine will not have to be paid. The system is, well,
flawed.
But anyway, Ugo Carabelli actually had a reason. And I know that 99% of retirements like this are, well, usually related to either being petty or something betting wise. But this one seems actually fully legit.
Hi, Zach. Apologies because I think you are joining the party in the last moment. But yes, we did touch upon Nadal Thiem US Open. Do rewind to the beginning of the show and you will be able to watch that. But obviously, it's 1 hour, 20 minutes. We spent an hour talking about Dominic Thiem. I think we covered most bases. If we didn't, do make sure you comment and shame Damien, myself, and Vanch on Twitter and say, why didn't you mention this particular match? and we'll do our best to address that. But anyway, Vanch and Damien, many thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Good fun.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Dominic Thiem. Auf Wiedersehen. And well, hopefully he stays in tennis in some capacity, whatever he will enjoy.
I
and
saw
whatever.
him the 2021 US Open final, Medvedev Djokovic. He was commentating on German-speaking TV on Eurosport, and he was rocking the turtleneck that particular day. So fingers crossed, if he does return to TV, yeah, we see the turtleneck again. On that bombshell, we will bring this to an end and remind you, you all know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.